All right, what's up, Amians? This is Stephen and Ben from Phantology with your Dawnshard review. So, Dawnshard came out a week ago or so, and this is a really tight timeline because it came out and then Rhythm of War is actually coming out tomorrow as of recording. We'll see when the episode actually comes out. But Dawnshard seems to be fairly essential for reading Rhythm of War. We're not going to talk about any of the pre release chapters, but in the pre release chapters, they've already covered some things, or at least alluded to some things from the events of Dawnshard that you may be
Mhm.
a little confused about if you haven't read the book.
Yeah, it's not essential to read, but I mean, chances are, if you're willing to read a 1,200 page, Rhythm of War book, you're going to be willing to read a 150 page Dawnshard book. So, but the one downside is that there will not be an audiobook for at least a year, it sounds like, or for about a year.
Yeah, it's going to take some time. I guess Michael Kramer and Kate Redding, who are supporters of Phantology, actually, they may be a little backed up or something. I'm sure they have a lot of projects going on. But Dawnshard
Right.
audiobook is a little stretched out, but it's only about 200 pages. So it's a quick read. It's a fun read. I would say you should do it. I mean, when we say that it's essential for Rhythm of War, it's kind of hard for us to know because we haven't read Rhythm of War yet. So we really
Right.
don't know.
We don't know. But I mean, I guess I'm going by words of Brandon for that, where he's said that it's not essential. Like he said that it would help, but not essential.
Yeah, I would say if you're a mega fan, you're gonna read it anyway. If you're a casual fan, you've probably been reading Stormlight Archive and had a lot of things that popped up and you're like, oh, I have no idea what that is, but I'll just move on. So you can just kind of file these types of things in that category.
Right. Like for example, if you haven't read like Warbreaker yet, then this is going to be a similar thing where like there's a character like Azure that is from Warbreaker, but it's not essential to have read Warbreaker to follow her character in Stormlight.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, great comparison. So as we actually talk about the book, I give it out of 10. I'm giving this like an 8. I really liked it. And
Mm.
I have some personal reasons for really liking it that we'll get into a little bit. But what was your ranking of this novella?
Yeah, I mean, so I guess the one that we would like do a direct comparison to would be Edge Dancer.
Right.
And that's been so long for me since I've read that book that I have a really hard time remembering it. So it's hard for me to like rank it compared to that book, but I would say an 8. I really enjoyed not to do spoilers yet, but like the Cosmere tie-in at the very end was awesome. And so that to me it kind of elevated the whole book. And so yeah, I would say 8 to 8.5. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's pretty comparable to Edge. I mean, that would be the direct comparison. I'm kind of like you. I don't remember too many of the details there. It was about Lift. It was a little cheesy. Lift's not my favorite character. There was some major tie-ins towards the end of that one, similar to this, similar structure, I guess. But this one was better. This was a better novella.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, Stephen, are we doing a non-spoiler review for this book as well, or just do
I think
one
that's about
review?
it. I think we just
Okay.
did it.
No, yeah. I mean, I guess to like break from the podcast, like we had started the pattern of doing a spoiler, not spoiler.
Yeah, it's a little tough
Like
for.
two
I
episodes.
figured with this one with the shorter book,
Hmm.
it's a little tough to do that. So that's going to wrap up our non-spoiler review. We liked the book. We thought it was really fast-paced and a fun read. 8 out of 10 for both of us. Not an essential read if you're not a huge Stormlight Cosmere person, but if you are, then it is, and you'll enjoy reading it.
Yeah, and I guess to add on to that, it might be worth kind of going back and reviewing Risen's interludes before this.
Yeah, for
Uh,
sure.
Specifically the one from Oathbringer, like it's like interlude 13, and it details how her Batsk, I don't know how you pronounce that, but her
Seems right.
teacher, yeah, essentially had commissioned a ship to be built, and it's supposed to be like the most technologically advanced vessel on the seas, and he essentially gifted it to her.
And that interlude features Cheery Cheery using her powers. I imagine Cheery Cherry as a female Larkin, but I actually don't know. So Cheery Cherry is using its powers to suck up the stormlight. So that's something that's going to be essential. I mean, you could go back to the Words of Radiance and Way of Kings interludes as well if you want more of her character. But I think
Mhm.
Oathbringer is probably the most direct tie-in to what's going on here. If you really wanted to remember everything, you should review some of the stuff that happens with Lopen as well in Oathbringer. Specifically, how he swears the second ideal, I thought had some good callbacks in this one.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's not essential to go back. Like I didn't go back and review anything. I did a reread earlier in the year, like probably like 3 or 4 months ago. So it was relatively recent, but I mean, it's pretty self-contained, right? Like, so you don't worry about reviewing too much for this book.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a great summary. So that's it for non-spoilers. Go ahead and go read the book. Now, before we go into spoilers, if you like Phantology, you can find us online at www.phantologybooks.com. Our full catalog is online, and we are going to be covering Stormlight Archive, specifically Rhythm of War, in extreme depth. We're planning on putting out one episode per part. There's 5 parts in the book, so look forward to 5 episodes on Rhythm of War. If that's, I mean, if the 1,200-page book wasn't enough, then you have lots of minutes and hours of Phantology to listen to. And if you want to support the channel, you can do that at patreon.com/Phantology_books. So let's get to Dawnshard.
Yeah.
So we've kind of started this new pattern of reviewing characters specifically. This review is going to be shorter. Obviously, there's just not quite as much to talk about in this one. But I wanted to open by talking about Risen, and I wanted to get maybe a little personal on Phantology. This episode, we don't typically do this, but this had a lot of really good tie-ins for me personally, because like Risen, I happen to be disabled. Specifically, I'm a quadriplegic and have been for almost 10 years now. And Risen is a paraplegic. So, not exactly the same thing as me. But I thought that there were a lot of tie-ins as far as what it's like to live life being disabled, and a lot of the mental state that she was in and the things that she was concerned about and the things that she was working through and her identity, etc. I found it to be extremely accurate and very poignant, and I got emotional several times reading it. Like, I really liked the book, and this is probably why, because bravo to Brandon for actually representing disability in a fairly accurate way. And I don't see this a lot in fantasy, and I could probably go on a rant on some things that I've seen in fantasy where it's like, and the person was healed at the end of the book, and you're like, seriously? I mean, that was their identity as being disabled, and now you're just going to heal them. And that's like borderline offensive to me, honestly. So I really liked Risen. And and Ben, I mean, you've known me for a while, so you kind of know some of my disability things. But I mean, maybe what were some things that you were thinking of? I mean, you're an able-bodied person, so how what were you thinking about as you were reading through Risen and her disabilities? Like, were you able to see some things and realize some things?
Yeah. I mean, I guess like, so it was really cool for me, like seeing how Nickley was trying to figure out how to best help her, right? Like, because I think that was
For
also
sure.
like, it really accurately showed kind of the dynamics between like an able-bodied person trying to help, but also like kind of trying to figure out the boundaries, and having Risen try and figure out how to explain what those boundaries should be. You know what I mean? Like that was really
Uh-huh.
interesting to me as well, and kind of struck home. Um,
A
and
little
it's
bit
top,
strange how he was actually like borderline the enemy, but that was what
right.
got him to kind of accept humans a little bit more, and was crucial. Yeah, and yeah, I think that was a fairly accurate representation of what I've seen as people try to help me in similar ways.
Yeah, and I mean, poor Nickley, he like had to figure out how to be human, like uh, like in general, right? We know that's something that as people kind of struggle with,
Yeah,
as well as trying to figure out how to interact in a like hard social situation to begin with. So he kind of drew the short end of the stick there. Um, but I mean, I knew going into it that Brandon had said that he wasn't going to heal her, right? So we kind of knew going into it that that was something that we would enjoy about it, right?
oh, did he actually say that? I
I'm
wasn't sure. I just
I'm
had
pretty
faith
sure,
that he wouldn't. I thought
right?
he would handle this the right way.
Yeah, and so I guess um, what was like for you, like what was the moment in the book that you knew that you were going to enjoy it? Like, I mean, I imagine going into it, you would be pretty nervous. Like, I mean, you obviously have a lot of faith in Brandon, and you knew that he would, like, had beta readers
Yeah.
that were paraplegics that read it and gave feedback. So you had to have some good faith going in. But what was the moment that you knew that it was handled well?
Yeah, exactly what you said. I knew that they were Paras beta reading, so I really wasn't concerned. I really figured that this would be done well. So the moment for me was probably just the first chapter as she's
Mhm.
sitting in her cabin or office or wherever that actually takes place. And she's just reflecting on some things. She's reflecting on these ideas of like wanting to hide herself away and trying to deal with being disabled. And one of the things that really struck home for me was when she was thinking about the things that she needed and how to outfit the ship appropriately, and how tired she was of people asking her, oh, why do you need that, why do you need that? And that's something that I've totally seen, because it's so frustrating when you need something done and you have to go to someone else to do it in the first place. Just that lack of independence in your life is really hard being disabled. And then
Mhm.
it's even more frustrating when you know you're going to have to explain it to someone, and you're going to have to explain it because there is this, it just shows the gulf in between you and an able-bodied person. And that is so frustrating. And I thought that was captured really well just in that one thing that she was thinking about.
Yeah. I enjoyed the fact that he put like what so we know that Sanderson tries to stay away from a lot of internal dialogue, like an internal navel gazing. He tries to do a lot of show not tell.
Yeah, he doesn't
But
do that
he
as
took
much.
yeah, but he took some time in that first chapter to have some kind of internal dialogue from Risen to kind of set the stage for that. So I also enjoyed that. Was
So
there anything that like you thought could have been like was too cheesy or could have been handled better? I have a part that I thought was cheesy, but I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
honestly, as far as the way that the disability stuff was handled, no, I thought it was handled really well. I don't know if there was anything cheesy. What were you thinking of?
So the part where Risen is figuring out her hovering chair and like all the crew kind of give her like a
Oh,
thumbs
okay.
up or like a
Yeah.
like fist in the air. I don't like I enjoyed the scene, but I didn't like I thought it was cheesy. I enjoyed it and I wanted to like ask you about it. Like what do you thought about it?
I can see how it might be a little cheesy, the crew of these, tough, muscly sailor guys and gals are gathered around and cheering on Rison. But at the same time, I could see it happening. I
Hmm.
could see it happening. This is a huge moment for her where now she's able to get this independence. She breaks down emotionally when she realizes what is possible for her. Great moment. Totally would have done the same thing if I was in her situation. Because to think that you're bound in a chair and then all of a sudden you can move your own chair. I mean, I have a power wheelchair, so that isn't something that I've struggled with a ton, but I have in the but actually, recently I was on this vacation and I was taking a different wheelchair that broke. And as a result, I was kind of trapped in a loaner chair where I couldn't maneuver myself around very well for a few days. And it was really tough. And I got pretty depressed. The fact that I was like on this vacation, but couldn't enjoy it as much as possible. So, those types of feelings, to think that, like, okay, I'm stuck in here, I can't do what I want to. And then all of a sudden now I can move around. That was really well done.
Hmm.
As far as the crew cheering her on, yeah, maybe a little cheesy, but at the same time, I think it shows the connection that she was building with the sailors, and
Yeah.
it shows a good connection between able-bodied and disabled, and hopefully the
Yeah.
relationship that we're building as a people.
Yeah. Okay. I agree with that. I also one thing I really liked was by the end, like uh, and this is kind of going full spoilers, but by the end, she wasn't healed at all, but things had transcended her disability, right? Like when she was
Right.
talking to Nicola and his people, I don't know, what are they called? The Dicerian? And I don't
The
know.
Dicey Amiens, the sleepless.
Right. Like I don't think her disability was mentioned one time in that conversation. You know what I mean? So like it was a huge part of her identity for most of the book, and then like at the very end it was like there's so much more going on here,
Uh-huh.
and she's thought of as much more than that.
Absolutely. So one of the things that we have to deal with in the way that Sanderson's doing this is this whole idea of like identity based healing and disability. Like Lopen is able to heal himself because he never really viewed himself as missing an arm, kind of questioning that, frankly. But for Rison, you know, her identity was that she became disabled, right? She was a paraplegic, couldn't move herself around. And so you see from the beginning to the end of this book, she goes from that identity to now her identity is she's still disabled, but she's able to do so much more. And it doesn't mean that she's not disabled anymore, but she also has all these other abilities. And so that's something that I've seen as well. Like I view my identity as totally someone who's disabled, but also despite my disability, I'm able to do all these other things. And I feel like that makes me so much more as a person. Like that's the
Mhm.
probably the one thing that I'm proudest of in my life is that stretching past all the physical
Mhm.
limitations. And so yeah, at the end you see that like her disability doesn't really matter because she has all these other talents and abilities. And so yes, she's disabled, but that's just a part of her. There's so much more to her.
Yeah. Yeah, and um I love how characters in the book made a concerted effort, many of the characters did, to not look down on her because of her disability, but you could also tell that they were having a hard time getting past it, right? Like even
Yeah.
like the captain had a negative opinion of her because she was like a bratty kid with when she was staying with her baps, right? Like
And the captain thought the ship would be hers and it wasn't. And yeah,
right. So there's like a lot of stuff going into that. And by the end, I was really impressed that the captain was able to kind of like see past all of that, and and also the fact that like she could have this disability and still be just as good of a leader as her former teacher was.
yeah, it was cool to see, you know, there was no one who was obviously negative or looking down on her because she was disabled, which is great. I mean, let's try to avoid that, please.
Yeah, yeah,
But everyone was trying to accept her and do the best that they could, but they didn't really know all the time. But they were doing some small things, like when she went and talked to Navani, Navani pulled her chair over so they could sit next to each other and talk
right.
rather than standing. You know, that was a nice little effort. Rushu, the ardent, didn't really know. I mean, she's oblivious in general. So there's a part where she comes over and starts grabbing her chair and starting to mess with it. And Rison's like,
Yeah,
"Hey, you need to ask me first." And she's like, "Oh, sorry, I didn't realize." And so you see that a lot in the real world. Like people in general are, you know, fairly nice to you as a disabled person. They want to help, but they don't know how. And so this is these were several examples of things you might see.
yeah, and I think Sanderson does a really good job with those minor characters. What was the artist's name? Rushu.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she like you can tell that he's done a lot of thought into just her character alone in that interaction. You know what I mean? Like
Uh-huh.
even a relatively minor person, he like had thought through how she would interact with Risen. You know what I mean? And it kind of does show you the spectrum of people and their relationship with disability.
So we could probably talk about this for a while. I could go on. I have a lot of thoughts on disability. I actually made a Reddit post that got some little bit of traction, and so that was nice to see. The community is very welcoming of this, which makes sense for a Stormlight Archive community. But let's actually talk about some other elements of the book
Yeah.
as well. You know, there was a lot to this one outside of Risen, but that obviously was the central theme, and I loved it. So, Cheery Cheery, we healed her at the end a little bit because she was dying or she was sick because she needed to bond another Lux friend. I think Mandra is what they're called. They need to bond bigger and bigger ones in order to support their huge size. Nice little thing about how great shells work. And so she's going to continue to get bigger, right? And so a theory that I saw on Reddit that I love is that by the end of the series or at some point in the series, she's going to be large enough where Rison and Cheery Cheery are going to be the first Larkin and Rider pair. And we're not going to have Dragon Riders in the series, but we are going to have Larkin Riders, at least one.
Yeah, that was awesome to kind of have that realization. And if you listen to our Rhythm of War prep episode, that will come as no surprise to you that that type of symbiotic relationship was something that was on the horizon too. So, yeah, we definitely see the fact that Spren make these ginormous characters possible. um, their size possible. And we also know that gravity is 70% on Rorschach compared to Earth. So we also, that
Ah,
allows, yeah, that
do we
allows for
know? Oh,
these.
nice trivia. I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, well, there you go. That was also something I learned in our Rhythm of War preview chapter.
The more you know.
Yeah. So prepare for some great, like big flying things in the future.
For sure. Okay. So, Dawnshard, to go towards the end of the book.
Yeah.
So, what is a Dawnshard? From what we understand, there are Adon Alcium was killed using the power of the Dawnshards
Yeah.
somehow. And there are 4 Dawnshards, and each of the 4 have then 4 shards that are associated with it. Rison has grabbed this one whose command is change. And this is kind of like a primal magic. My theory is that the Dawn shards have the ability to control the other shards somehow. So everything that's associated with change, whatever 4 of those are, I'm not sure, but whatever 4 of those are, Rison would be able to command them somehow, or maybe she probably doesn't know how, but she has the potential to.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, I think that that's true. I mean, so there's definitely like multiples of 4 happening here, right? Like, so there's 4 Dawn shards, and each of those Dawn shards are can control 4, like 4 of the shards for 16 total. And I think we
Right.
can guess pretty closely which 4 the change command is going to control. Right.
I mean, we could probably guess some of them, but we don't. Do we even know all 16?
No, we don't know all 16. I don't think we might know 16 by now. Sanderson has said in the past that he's been keeping a few of them intentionally vague because he hasn't
Yeah.
decided on them.
Okay.
He has pretty good ideas, but he wants to keep them open. So, but like, for example, preservation would not be one of these that the change command would control versus, and like probably not honor, right? Oh, is honor even a
Yeah,
shard?
probably no. Honor's a shard. Yeah,
Okay, yeah,
yeah.
okay.
Probably not those ones.
But like
Odium,
probably
probably not.
cultivation.
Cultivation, I could see. Yeah, you're growing. Things are changing.
Yeah. So I don't know. I guess maybe we should have a list of these shards that we've been exposed to, and I think it would be pretty obvious if we had that list in front of us. Maybe not though.
So maybe there'll be some interaction between Risen and cultivation in the future.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Do we know when cultivation came to Roshar?
I think the same time as honor. In my prep for that Rhythm of War preview episode, I believe it was the same time as honor. Like Roshar was created by Adonalcium, and he put things there, and then they came there together as gods, I believe.
Okay. Okay, sorry, that was kind of a random question.
Yeah.
And so how we also learn at the end of Dawnshard how the command came to reside there, right? So it came through the perpendicularity that was
Came
at
through
the
cultivation's perpendicularity at the peaks.
cultivations perpendicular at the peaks, and we know that the horn eaters are some type of guardians at the gate, or
Right.
something like they have some like Cord seemed to think that Nickley and his people would have known about some type of deal that was made between the horn eaters and another. We're not exactly sure who they made the deal with, right? Like,
Yeah, that was vague. And Nick and
that
Cord
was
is kind of thinking back to the legends of her people.
right.
But there
Yeah.
were some details there. One thing that we know that wasn't in this book, but we just know from words of Brandon, was that Hoyd was once a Dawnshard, held a Dawnshard, or I guess was one. The fact that he had the power made him one. And he is no longer, he's given it up somehow, but he's still considered like a Dawnshard sliver. Like it's changed him fundamentally. And because of that, he cannot commit violence or eat meat,
Oh,
which is
really? I
why
didn't
at
know
the
that.
end of Oathbringer, he has to have someone else punch his own tooth out for him.
Huh. That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And I don't think we know which Dawnshard he was or really what the deal was there, but it's part of it. One of the theories about Hoyd that I like is he is trying to do something where he's just like gathering in all the different types of investiture, and he doesn't want to get too committed to any one thing. So maybe that's why he gave up Dawnshard. I don't know. Who knows what's going on with Hoyd?
Right, because we know that that now Risen cannot bond as Bren, right? Like that's part of the
Well,
deal
it
that
seemed
she
like
made.
she could, but they said in the
Oh,
deal
gotcha.
she could have if she wanted to, but they stipulated that as part of the deal.
Okay, so I wonder why that was so important for them, though, right?
So I
Like,
just took it to be like they wanted to have her be a lower profile. If she was a Knights Radiant, she's
okay,
more visible, but there could be more to it.
okay. Um, so I guess
Another theory that I saw on Reddit was the potential that Dalinar is also a Dawnshard because of the strange interaction he had with cultivation. We talked about this a little bit in our Oathbringer review that came out earlier in the week. I don't know if I'm buying this one as much, but I could see a theory around it.
yeah. Um, okay, so I guess how did you what did you think about the way that this was all resolved with the deal being made and how they kind of just let Risen walk away with it? And obviously it showed Risen's negotiation prowess, and like throughout the book she was saying like you have to find the need and then
Uh huh.
like say how you're gonna fulfill that need. And so it was heavily foreshadowed, and she was able to find the need to keep this safe. And she said the only way to keep it safe was to give it to her, right? Like that was the essence of the deal.
Right. So are you trying to ask if I thought it was believable
Like,
enough?
right. Like how realistic did you think it was? I mean, is it really safe with Risen kind of going around? I don't know. Like I thought Risen talked a good game, but I don't know if I would have been convinced.
Yeah, I think this is a good example of, Sanderson creates these worlds that are gray with a hint of optimism, and things tend to work out in the end. If this was more of a grimdark story, like a George R. R. Martin or Joe Abercrombie writing this, like this deal would not happen. But because characters have more of this like flavor of optimism, things like this are able to work out. And that's the writer, that's what he sets up. So I was fine with it. Although, yeah, a little bit of me was questioning, like, really, they had the potential. They've killed a lot of people before. They could just shut this down again. But,
Right. Like
but the fact that she, held the Dawn Shard, obviously that changed things for them.
right, exactly. Because we're not exactly that was also something that I think was left vague, right? Was what happens if Risen were to die? What happens to the Dawn Shard? Would it just
Yeah,
like be a honing missile back to the mural for like whatever was keeping it there, or would it just kind of
to
go
just
off
float on her
into
body like loot in a video game. Yeah, who
right?
knows?
Exactly. Yeah. So that's interesting.
And also, the Sleepless may have been thinking like, oh, she's the Dawn Shard. She's got some power here. She doesn't know how to use it, but who knows? There's a chance she could have gotten angry and blasted off something against him, or
Yeah.
they got to keep her happy a little bit, I'm guessing.
Yeah. Exactly. I agree with that. It's one of the theories that we've seen is that, well, I think it was explicitly stated, right, that Dawnshard, that it has the ability to end worlds, right? And so you got to be
Yeah.
careful with them.
So the theory is, or has this been confirmed? No, I'm actually not sure. But the Dawn Shard was used to destroy Ashen originally, our people over there when the humans came to Roshar.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one thing we know that Nikley is very concerned about it falling into the wrong hands because it
Yes.
is such a dangerous and powerful tool. So,
Yes. And
and
it's possible that all the world hopping and stuff that we've seen is related to this. I mean, this could have really big effects in the future. We'll see.
right. I mean, is Hoyd looking for this? Like,
He's probably interested in about this in this development.
yeah. So, do we see Hoyd this book? I know it's kind of like a point of pride that he's been in like every
Yeah, I
Cosmere
actually
book.
don't think so. I actually
Oof.
don't think so, which was interesting. They didn't mention him when Cord was talking about the gods coming through the perpendicularity and everything. Hoyd was mentioned, but I
But
don't
not.
think we explicitly saw him unless it was a cameo somewhere.
It would have been easy to do with that scene with Navani, right? Like Cord could or Wig have just popped his head in, made some snarky
Yeah,
remark. So
yeah, that's strange. So maybe we need to look for that again. Maybe people on Reddit have found him.
yeah. Um. So okay. So we've mentioned Cord a few times. What did you think about her and her mission to get the shard plate, and kind of, there was also some miscommunication there where at one point Risen thought that Cord just wanted money, but that seemed out of character for her, and turns out the
Right.
riches that she wanted was like protection for her people.
I thought she was a decent character. I thought she characterized the Horn Eaters a bit more. We haven't seen hardly any of them outside of Rock. You know, she's a nice little patriot for her people. She wanted to do this in order to help them. And then at the end of the day, it just kind of confuses me. Why can Rock not commit violence? I mean, I get it. Like he's got this oath or something not to. But we talked about this in our previous episode as well, the Rhythm of War hype one or the Oathbringer one, maybe both. But I'm just kind of confused by what's going on with Rock.
Yeah, obviously Cord made a point of saying that her father was some important figure, right, as part
Uh
of
huh.
that
And they talked
pact
about
of,
him being able to like draw the bow of ages or something like
yeah,
that, some important thing for them, which makes sense since we saw him wield the shard bow, which he shouldn't have been able to.
right. And he was a like deadeye when he was firing up those pouches in Way of Kings
Yeah.
to help them escape. So we know that Rock has a propensity for the bow. But yeah, I don't know. So we also know that Cord is going to be Risen's bodyguard, going forward. So that's going to be an interesting dynamic.
Crazy theory. What if Rock was the dude, the archer that Dalinar recruited onto his side in his vision, who was able to shoot super well and super far? What if that was him?
Crazy theory.
Probably not,
Um,
because I don't think they look the same or talked the same at all.
no, but I don't know. That goes back to the Horn Eaters might have some type of a symbiotic relationship with Spren where they're not bonding them, but they might be working together with them in some other way. I don't know.
Yeah, they can see Spren. That's obviously important. These are the things that Sanderson does. He just tells you something like, oh, Horn Eaters can see Spren. And so you believe it. And then all of a sudden he flips it on your head and it's like, well, there's some crazy reason why they can that just blows your mind. And so
Yeah.
these are the things we're looking for to not be fooled this time.
So, okay, my other question about the book in general was how much of this book was dictated by cosmere thoughts in general versus like the plot specifically. So, like, for example, the whole time we've talked, we haven't even mentioned the fact that like Nickley was assumed to be a friend, and the like one of the big twists was that he was the one that was sabotaging everything, right? Like, so there's a lot of like kind of Sanderson specific things that happened where there's like twists and turns, but like that kind of got overshadowed by the very end of the book.
Yeah, I think so. The plot was fairly straightforward. You know, the pirates are on the mission to find the treasure. There's a traitor, but even Nickley being the traitor, like it was told to you before it actually happened for the other characters, so it wasn't even really a twist.
Right. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Um and
So yeah, just to answer your question, I do think it was probably more fueled by the characters and by the Dawnshard, Cosmere stuff, and the plot was just kind of like a vehicle to get you there. So I mean, I was fine with it, but maybe could have been stronger.
okay, and then related to that, we've spent this whole time we've hardly even mentioned Lopin, right? So like I mean, was he necessary here? Are you glad that he was kind of thrown in here? Like it definitely felt like Sanderson wrote the book for Risen and for this like adventure that she was going on, and then thought,
Yeah.
huh, Lopin could work in here too.
Yeah, and I think he made a good decision in doing that. We probably should mention that Sanderson wrote this on a really condensed timeline in order to get this thing out before Rhythm of War. So props to him. I think we maybe overlooked some of like the weaker plot type of things and give him props for just getting the thing out in time for
Yeah,
us
that's
to read
true.
it. But yeah, Lopin, I think Lopin works great here. And I can't remember if he was ever planning on Lopin or if Lopin just took on a bigger role because he did say the book has gotten a lot larger since adding Lopin in.
Yeah.
But we already know Lopin fairly well. He's one of the better characterized Bridge 4 guys. I thought the best moment was with I thought the best moment with him was when he's joking with Risen and they were talking about joking about your disabilities and they
Yeah.
were saying like, oh, Risen shouldn't have to joke like that. That's inappropriate. And Lopin's like, yes, you shouldn't have to, but
Yeah.
you do. It's kind of something that it's a disability strategy, honestly, to deal
Right.
with people who are just uncertain with who you are, and it's something that I've done quite a bit. So I thought it was great.
And I mean, that goes back to like kind of Lopin's core personality, right, was like the one-armed Herdazian jokes, right? Like, so
Uh-huh.
he's like, I guess, bound his personality to that type of defense or that type of coping mechanism or whatever you want to call it,
Yeah,
right? Like,
which is why I really don't understand why he was able to heal himself. I get that it's identity based, but you don't lose an arm and continue to think of yourself as two armed.
yeah,
I just don't get that. I mean, that's not my thing. I have not lost an arm. So let me know
yeah,
if I'm wrong there, but that just seems strange.
yeah. I agree with that. I guess I didn't question it too much because that's part of like the privilege of being able-bodied, right? Like you don't think too
Yeah.
deeply about stuff like that. But
I
I think
I
it's clear,
almost wonder if he got some feedback and was like,
right? That's what I was just gonna
yeah,
say.
and so, this is why he has beta readers on that are subject matter experts.
Yeah. Yeah. So I agree that he might be doing a little bit of a course correction, maybe even like retconning the reason why Lopin was able to do it. You know what I mean? Um,
Possibly.
so so one thing if Lopin wasn't necessary, I don't know about the Huosho, like Huoshi, whatever Lopin's cousin's name is.
Hoyo?
Hoyo, yeah, I don't know. I was I was unclear whenever I was reading about that about Hoyo. I was like, this is not necessary here, even though it did set up a nice moment for Lopin at the end.
Yeah, I think he was really just there in order to grow Lopin. In one of Sanderson's annotations that I happened to stumble upon, he was talking about the inspiration for Hoyo. And he said he's inspired by one time I'm not going to remember all the details, but I believe he was somewhere in the Middle East doing a tour or something. And he had a driver and he was talking to the driver, comes to realize that this guy is super smart and he's got a PhD or some kind of degree. But he was unable to find work because of social strife and conflicts that just made it very difficult for him. And he remembered this moment and thought that, there's so many people that are much smarter than myself who are stuck in these types of situations where it's difficult for them. So I think Hoyo was the inspiration there, where he
Wow.
was this very smart, capable person, but he's always, badgered by Lopin and just kind of struggled to I don't know, really make much of an impact. But then towards the end, he was more of the hero. He was able to swear the ideal first, and Lopin didn't take that very well.
Yeah. No, that's so. I guess I'm confused with that. I mean, obviously, one of the defining moments of Hoyo was breaking the was it the span read that he was kind of tinkering with.
Yeah.
Is that just? I guess he's just a tinker, and that's an indication of his intelligence. I guess because I didn't know that story, so I'm kind of trying to fit what I know of him in there now.
Yeah, no, that's probably a good connection there. Like he's really smart. I guess he's not smart enough to fix the span read, but he wants to get more into the industry a little bit, looking for that first job in
Right.
tech, but having
Yeah.
trouble because of his identity.
Yeah. He submitted something to GitHub that was not well received, I guess.
Yeah. Having trouble
Um.
getting that interview callback.
Yeah. So okay, I buy that, and that also we should mention is what paved the way to figuring out this hover ability for Risen's chair,
Uh-huh.
and that will also go on to have larger ramifications. So
Yeah,
he,
and then with that, I mean, we can talk about Nickley a little bit. I think one of the better moments there, or what the creepier moments, was when Nickley was like, "Oh, you found this technology that's going to help a lot of people. You should write to people right away and tell them what this is in case you don't survive." It's
yeah,
like,
exactly.
"Oh, okay."
Yeah.
That really
That
defined him though, because he was not a bad person, but he was, I guess committed to this idea that these guys are not going to survive this
right.
voyage. We cannot let them.
Yeah. Well, that was always kind of a dichotomy with Nickley's personality is he was kind of this ambassador for humankind and trying to save them, like save this vessel, and like arguing
Yeah.
on their behalf, like, hey, let me try one more thing, let me try one more thing. Okay, we'll put these false like treasure on the island and hopefully they'll be satisfied with that. So he was like arguing on your behalf while at the same time being like this creepy thing that you're kind of afraid of and know that he will kill you if he needs to.
Yeah.
So
Overall,
cool
with
character.
the Amiens, I liked the characters. I thought the idea of having these characters that are legion of different bodies and can communicate wirelessly, that was cool. I think Sanderson said these were some of his more original character concepts that he finally got into the book a little bit more. I was maybe a little bit disappointed by Amia. It was always this huge mystery what's out there. Turns out
Mm,
there's a destroyed town that they've buried an Oathgate underneath. The Dawnshard is awesome, obviously, but I don't know. Maybe I was hoping for a little bit of a cooler location once they made it there.
right. I could see that. Kind of like a Euro type location where there's like
Yeah,
these
it's something else about that there's nothing special about Amia at all, other than the fact that the Dawnshard is there.
right. Yeah.
Or
I
maybe I
don't
needed
know.
more detail.
There
Like, what happened to it? Why was it destroyed in the first place? We still don't know.
yeah, there might be something that happens because obviously there's an oath gate. I don't think the people that built the oath gate there were looking for the Dawn Shard
Yeah,
or
yeah.
knew that the Dawn Shard was there. So
And now that
maybe
there's Oathgate there, we know our characters will be back.
yeah,
So
and that was
more
all
potential.
that was one of the reasons why they knew that the Dawn Shard wouldn't be, safe there is because it's only an oath gate away from the world now. So yeah, I think that there's gonna be something else that happens there. Some mysteries yet to be uncovered.
All right. Anything else about Dawnshard? I think we talked through.
Yeah, we talked through most of it. So the last question I want to have, and this is so this book came about because a stretch goal was reached on Kickstarter, right? So my question is to you is like, how likely was this book not to have happened? You know what I mean? Like, was it ever not going to happen? Because it seems pretty necessary.
Was the stretch goal that he would write it, or just that you would get access to it?
Oh, maybe just that you would get access to it. I'm not sure. I thought it was that he would write it.
I
Maybe
thought he
that it
was
would come
always
out
planning
before.
on. He was probably always planning on doing it. I can't remember if it was a stretch goal or not. We could easily look into that. But yeah, I guess well, let us know. We'll look into that
Yeah, we'll
and
look
brush
into
up on
that.
that.
Yeah. I guess that goes back to my overall point though, that like the book is necessary. Like you should read it. If for some reason you can't read it before Rhythm of War, definitely start Rhythm of War, but make sure to circle back and read this eventually.
Yeah. In my head, I'm thinking he always was planning on writing it because he's been doing a novella in between. I mean, he didn't do a novella in between Way of Kings and Words of Radiance, so it could have not
Well,
happened.
I,
But
I mean, so far he's only done one novella, right? Like, so this
well,
is kind
this
of
is number
making it
two.
right. This is number two, so it's kind of
Yeah.
making the pattern here, right? So
Yeah, I mean now he's got to keep on going. He's
it's
said he's out there saying that the novella 4.5 is going to be rock.
yeah. Maybe what do you think? So this is we can end, but what do you think the 1.5 would be if he went back and retroactively wrote one?
Ooh, something that was important for Words of Radiance in a small way.
I'm thinking something
I
with Shallan, right? I think
well,
that
but
she
but the
could.
novellas are not they're not main characters. They're the side
Mm,
characters.
yeah. Well, maybe let us know what you think on Twitter or on
Maybe like a
Discord. Like,
Renarin thing. I feel like Renarin needs more
oh, Renarin could be good.
time on screen. Renarin bonding Gliss or something like that. When did that even happen? Because that was huge in Words of Radiance when he was seeing the future. And so if there was
Yeah.
some story that kind of hinted at that a little bit more.
Yeah, I like that. So 1.5 Fantology guarantee is that if he was to do it, he would do Renarin bonding clips.
Phantology guarantee. Nice. All right, let me just end by saying, Yalb, you're still alive, man. Salute to you. Way to
Well,
go.
you and three other people. I mean, we've got to have like a survivor club,
Yeah.
and yeah. So
Yeah, Sanderson has got a little bit of flack for not ever killing anyone. And this is yet another example. It's like, dude, I mean, this was a fine death, minor character that was a little bit lovable. He dies, but he's back again.
he's back again. I guess it's somewhat believable given that Shallan survived the shipwreck that somebody like a few other people would have.
Yeah, yeah.
The
I
fact
mean,
that it
I'm
was
not trying to
like
actively kill characters, but
Yeah.
At some point, you got to let him go a little
Everybody had
bit.
moved on to y'all, on from y'all. You could have just, yeah. I bet that he'll have some other importance later on.
Hopefully, he helps us buy more books. That was my favorite part of Shallan's storyline thus far. All right. If you like Phantology, you can find more of us online at www.phantologybooks.com. We'll be covering a lot more Stormlight, so look forward to that. Rhythm of War, as we are recording right now, comes out tomorrow in 8.5 hours now. If we wanted to stay up till midnight and read the night away, we're probably not going to do that. We're going to take our time, enjoy it, and get episodes out for each of the different parts. Couldn't be more pumped. 2020 is finally redeeming itself a little bit here with some nice Stormlight information that we've been waiting years for. So thanks for doing this with me, Ben.
Yeah. Thanks, Steven.